I'm gonna mute your mic until.
You can hear me clearly?
Yeah, but I'm gonna mute your mic because we're live. Hold on.
Oh,
Shiyu, Osta, Shahin, Yidita. Welcome to the Red Road East. I am your host, Fierce Truth Seeker. Pardon the feedback. I had my other screen going, so I know it's probably like a little echo. But anyway, introducing again, because it was probably hard to hear. Shiu, Osta Shahin Yidita. Welcome to the Red Road East. I'm your host, Fierce Truth Seeker, and I apologize for the delay. There were some technical issues, but we got through it. And without further ado, I have a very special guest that I promised would be here and talk about the topic of Marcus Garvey and whether or not he was a government agent, as we have been discussing. Again, we this particular series we've been doing, this is lecture 11. So when we first started talking about Garvey, we did, well, actually, this is the Moors and Indians, Friends or Enemies series. Okay, and this is the 20th uh, presentation of that series. And in that, the subsection of that series, we're talking about Marcus Garvey, whether or not he was a government agent. Okay, and prior to this, I did 11 lectures on just Garvey alone in that Moors and Indians lecture. Okay, and I had been defending Marcus Garvey's honor. Okay, and with me today, I have, not only is this a very heavy, and knowledgeable guest, lecturer, and professor in African studies and African American studies, but this particular guest was also my college professor in college. Okay, so without further ado, I want to introduce the great, magnificent Dr. Mark Christian.
thank you. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, how much do I owe you for that introduction? I'll pay you later.
It's been a while, man. You
yeah,
you look different. You cut the
yeah,
hair.
yeah. I had to. I had to. I'm losing on the crown there, Michael. Not like
Okay.
you, but yeah, it's a different scene. But I'm still fighting, still trying to do the good stuff.
You still look good, man. You still look good. You still look
Thank
young.
you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, Michael, I was listening to you there on your introduction. That Garvey was an agent of the government is quite
Yeah,
ridiculous. It's almost laughable. Yeah.
it is.
Now
It is.
there were agents in his organization, an agent number 800, which was under the uh, auspices of J. Edgar Hoover. So the Garvey experience and the movement and the UNIA was infiltrated, but Garvey could not be an agent of the government
No.
when
But now,
they
Professor,
destroyed his character.
yes, not to interrupt you, but before
Yeah.
you get started,
Okay.
I wanted you to introduce yourself. Tell the listeners who you are. Tell the
Okay.
viewers rather who you are, um, what you do,
Okay.
and things of that nature. Give them your bio.
Yes, I was so shocked by that nonsense about Garvey being a government aide. It just threw me. But basically, I'm the grandson of a Garveyite. My grandfather was George Rupert Christian, and he's in the literature. And he was one of the six who went out to Liberia to set up a settlement there in 1924, June 1924, but got blocked at the border. But that's another story. He did his work in Columbus, Ohio. My father's Gladstone Forbes Christian came to Liverpool, England in 1941, actually, and he worked in a munitions factory where he met my mother of British and Spanish heritage. They fell in love, as you do, and they had 13 children and I am number 12. And of those 13, I'm the youngest boy in the Christian clan, if you like. So
you
that
and I both have similar backgrounds,
large family.
Caribbean and Spanish
Okay.
heritage. Yeah.
Okay. So I've got Caribbean, Spanish, British heritage, which is it's a bit of a mixture. But if we look at the African diaspora, brother, there's a lot of mixture going on. Some people kind of try to, limit that knowledge, but it's a fact. It is what it is. But anyway, my interest in Black history and culture came from, as a child, listening to music in my family. And because my older siblings were 10, 15 years older than me, and they were bringing in the 1960s and 1970s music from the Temptations and Smokey Robinson and Percy Sledge and Aretha Franklin, all the greats from the 60s and 70s, Marvin Gaye. Stevie Wonder became a big favorite of mine in the early 70s with those albums that he did that were very powerful, along with Marvin Gaye's What's Going On album. So I was inculcated with all that knowledge. And along came Bob Marley, who my sisters loved. And I was listening to Bob Marley, who's like a Black history teacher also.
Right.
Listen to his music. So you got to understand that from a Black British perspective, I was raised in a Black cultural learning curve. And then on top of that, my brothers and I were singers. We did a cappella, and 5 of us, the Christians, we were called, sang a cappella, copying the Persuasions from New York.
Yeah, I heard that interview that you sent me the link for, and I didn't know that you were a singer.
I used to sing baritone bass,
Wow.
I used to, let's see. Boom, 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 boom. That's People Get Ready. And doing the bass line. But I used to follow Jimmy Hayes, who was I met him, my hero, Jimmy Hayes. He's passed away, I think, in 2017.
Oh,
very sad. But he's the great bass singer of the Persuasions. And I also sang with them. I sang with them twice. Once when I brought them to Miami University of Ohio in 2003, I think it was, looking back. It's almost 20 years. And then I brought them to Lehman College in 2013, 10 years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I sang with them twice. And so that's a personal great experience for me.
So that's what inspired you to do the class that you taught. Because I took 2 of your classes.
You took my Black music class, didn't you?
I surely did. I did that and the other class, the
civil rights, was it?
Yeah, the civil rights movement. Yeah.
I mean,
now tell the viewers about that. With your teaching and this, that, and the other.
Okay.
Let them know what qualifies Professor Christian to tell us something about Marcus Garvey is what they're gonna want to know. Who is he to tell us that Marcus Garvey is not an Asian? What this is what he's gonna tell us, blah blah blah. What is his qualification?
Especially with a light skin and a British accent. I really do have to qualify myself. But so I've got my grandfather. He couldn't get much stronger than that, who actually worked with Marcus Garvey, George Rupert Christian. So so that's a family qualification alone. But I did my master's in Black Studies. I'm cutting a long story short here because I worked in the Liverpool grassroots Black experience in education. That's how I got my start in education, through the Liverpool Black experience. And I went to a place called the Charles Wooten, and Charles Wooten was a Caribbean seaman who was murdered in Liverpool in 1919, anti-Black riots in Liverpool that Garvey spoke about in New York, actually. So there's a link there. But we had an educational institution named after him. And as a teenager, I went there for basic, you would call it GED. I did my GED at the Charles Wooten, and it was there I was introduced to Black history and culture, you see. So from there, I went back into the workplace and worked, and I found myself then doing a BA in sociology and American studies, because I always loved the Black American experience through music. Yeah. So while I was doing my BA, I met my mentor, who would be my mentor, Dr. William E. Nelson Jr. from Ohio State, who he built the Black Studies Department at Ohio State from 1969 till his retirement in 2009. And he would become my mentor, because he did a book called Black Atlantic Politics, and he compared Boston Black experience with Liverpool's Black experience. And while he was doing research in Liverpool, I showed him around like I was a research assistant for him, you know.
Oh, okay.
So Dr. Nelson became a mentor. I went out to OSU to do my master's in Black Studies in 1992-93, which is 30 years ago this September, 3 decades ago. And I did my master's in Black Studies, then came back to England and did a PhD in sociology, focusing on the Liverpool Black experience. Because when I was in the States, all my peers and professors asked me, tell us about the Black British experience, Mark. You see? But I'm interested in the African American, you see, that's my labor of love. But they wanted to know about the Black British experience. So a little light bulb went off, and I thought, well, I'll do a PhD on that.
There's a famous dub poet that I listen to who talks about the experience over there in London. Linton Kwesi Johnson. You familiar with him?
Very well known. Yeah, he comes out. He settled in Britain, in London. That's a little bit different from Liverpool. It's another city, the major city, and he came as a child from Jamaica. So there's also another guy, Benjamin Zephaniah. I would recommend you read and listen to Benjamin Zephaniah. He's like Linton Kwesi Johnson.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're great. Yeah, I know of them very well. So they would be Black. They would talk about. I mean, one of the poems is "England is a bitch."
Right.
but it'd be
I heard that.
England is a bitch, you know, in a patois. So the black experience over there has been pretty traumatic as well, you know. If you look at the African American experience, look at the Black British experience, there's difference, but there's also similarity, you know. We share a lot in common. And you know, now with the global nature of Black experience, you know, scholars have been going over to London since the last century, you know, the 1800s, you know. And congregate. Garvey was in London. W.E.B. Du Bois was in London. You know, a lot of people have done the Black British thing, you know, as part of the diaspora.
Exactly.
So my PhD, I then did a Fulbright at Kent State in the Department of Pan-African Studies in 1997-98. So and it was there while I was at Kent State that I then began to hear these flickerings of knowledge relating to my grandfather, because I was in the same city as him doing my master's. And I didn't know my grandfather's history in that city, Columbus, Ohio. My grandparents are buried in Columbus, Ohio. And I came from Liverpool, England to do my master's, not really knowing that history.
Wow.
So yeah, it's very spiritual, brother. You know, it's like I was drawn to Ohio because of my grandfather, and I found the graves and I found his history, and he was doing his thing in the 1920s, and I came there in the 1990s. So there's a 70-year gap between myself and him. He died. He was gone 10 years before I was born. So I didn't know my grandfather personally. I've got to know him since. And I feel like I have a spiritual connection to Ohio Columbus, Ohio, and just generally the this experience of Garvey history. 'Cause,
Mm-hmm.
So I then, from my Fulbright in the Department of Pan-African Studies at Kent State, I then came back to England for 2 years, because you have to do that as a Fulbright scholar. You have to return to your place of origin so that they can benefit from your Fulbright experience. You see, that's the scholarship issue. And then, cut a long story short, I took a job again in Ohio, but near Cincinnati, Miami University of Ohio. And I worked in the Hamilton campus along with the Oxford campus for 11 years. And I got all my qualifications there. And I did all a lot of my publications come from that experience. And then I came here to New York in August of 2011. So I've been here almost 11 years, and I did
Wow.
11 years in Ohio. So I've done 22 years full time as a professor now. I'm a full professor. I was chair of our department in New York for 8 years, and the last 3 years I've just been able to teach and write. So I've published 2 books in the last couple of years. I did a civil rights movement book that the class you took. I decided to write a book about the civil rights movement.
Okay.
And then my second book is a biography of Booker T. Washington.
One of my favorite people.
But Booker T is underestimated,
Yes.
He's very underestimated, Booker T. Washington. And
Yes.
you do know that he inspired Garvey.
Yes. Yes.
Coming back to our Garvey subject matter, it was Marcus Garvey read Up from Slavery, and he then was inspired to build a school in Jamaica. Initially, Garvey only wanted to raise funds to build a school in Jamaica, just like Tuskegee in Alabama.
Say that again and say it louder.
Yes, yes.
Because let me give you a little background of this, how this discussion came about.
Okay.
So, as you already know, I had a heated, you can say argument, but it wasn't really an argument, because it was with one of my brothers, one of my good brothers.
Yeah,
and he was saying that Marcus Garvey was, because I said something that came up about Garvey. He said, "Oh yeah, He said, "Oh yeah, Marcus Garvey, the government agent." And I said, "Government agent? What are you talking about?" He said Garvey was an agent, and we were screaming at each other at the top of our lungs for about 2 hours. Okay. And so that inspired me to do this discussion. I was on YouTube, and I typed in Garvey's name, and I saw on YouTube Marcus Garvey, government agent. And the guy who I was arguing with, he even sent me a video of somebody calling Garvey an agent, this, that, and the other. And so this put one of the individuals, I think one of them was a not to call names, but I think it was a Rod Hayes video, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. I'm not gonna say, it was another person who did a video. And I saw you on one of the videos, not Rod Hayes' video, but it was another video. And I saw, and I said, "Whoa!" I said, "Wait a minute." I was listening to The Voice.
Yeah, you
and
told
I
me.
looked, and I said, "That's Professor Christian."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh man, he was in a documentary." And so then I saw they cut a soundbite out, and that's when I contacted you.
Yeah.
And so
I mean,
I said, well, let me do a discussion, because I was already doing a series dealing with the Moors and the American Indian connection.
right.
And so I said, well, this falls along the same line. So let me make this a part of that discussion. So I started doing a series defending Garvey's honor.
Right.
And so that's why I said, well, I need to contact Professor Christian, and I need to, because I know you weren't too happy
No.
about seeing your words taken out of context.
Yeah. I mean, part of the Garvey experience, and by the way, part of the Nation of Islam experience was that they met with the KKK, but they only met in a strategic sense to say, look, crackers, we're not interested in what you do. We're not interested in your culture and anything you're related to, but leave our people alone. And, you know, you leave our people alone, we leave your people alone. We're not interested in your people or whatever it is you peddle. Just leave our people alone. Don't lynch our people. You see any UNIA people, leave them be. That's the kind of message Garvey had with the KKK, and also Elijah Muhammad had with the KKK later on in the 1930s or 1930s, I would say, with the Nation of Islam, or even later into the 50s. So that relationship of white kind of warped nationalism. What I don't like as well, Michael, as we can speak here, I don't like this juxtaposition of white nationalism and black nationalism as if they're two and one of the same thing. They're not. White nationalism has been aggressive, conquestial, domineering, taking over people's lands, killing people, taking their culture. It's an aggressive form of nationalism. Black nationalism, on the other hand, is about self-determination, building the economics in your own community, and building up a black identity, making it positive. It's got nothing to do with taking the land from somebody else, with destroying somebody else, lynching somebody else. Black nationalism has nothing to do with that. This is what we've got to get across as well. We say white nationalism is bad, black nationalism is bad. I don't see it that way. It's like,
no.
They tarnished the Black Panthers as well.
Right.
The Black Panthers were good people trying to build up their community, and they wanted to stop to police brutality.
That's right.
These are things,
and they even worked with other nationalities.
They did. They're more of a Marxist perspective,
including Caucasians.
That's another story, really. But what I'm trying to get across is the Black Panthers, the Nation of Islam, and the UNIA supporters were basically about building up their communities and having positive black identity. That was destroyed by white nationalism. To be black was a sin, and so Garvey was the first to say black is beautiful. Marcus Garvey in the 1920s. A lot of people forget that. They forget, the black is beautiful of the 60s was beautiful, but they were saying this in the 1920s.
Yeah, exactly.
But Garvey's history was destroyed. Garvey's character they tried to destroy. And it's another irony. Behind the destruction of Marcus Garvey's character was Hoover. And behind the destruction of the Black Panthers in the 1960s, again, was Hoover. And the destruction of Malcolm X, partly Hoover. So Hoover had 50 years of destroying black characters, either physically or character-wise, And we need to link this history. And so the documentary you saw, they took out that I may have said Garvey met with the KKK.
Right.
Now, if you take that out and run away with it, it's like Malcolm used to say, they take one sentence from me and run away with it and say everything what I didn't say.
Create a whole nother story.
Yes, you've disappeared on me, Mike.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right.
Keep talking.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that to me. The distortion of Marcus Garvey is ridiculous, and I'm an advocate for Marcus Garvey being pardoned, by the way, because he was set up for that mail fraud was nonsense. It was just wrong. Yeah, so I would be part of the Garvey sons trying to free Garvey from that trumped up charge, if you like,
That's right.
in the 1920s. And by the way, coming back to my family and my grandfather, he organized a parade in Columbus, Ohio in September 23 when Garvey was brought out of prison and Garvey went on a tour. And my grandfather stood by Marcus Garvey right the way through, even when he was deported in 1927. He was one of the group. He was one of the group of Garveys who stuck with Marcus Garvey because there's traitors within our movement, you know that, and there's people who would sell us for a pittance, you know.
Exactly.
And they exist today. They existed in Marcus Garvey's day, and there were people who brought him down. And now we've got to, as a generation, it'll be the centenary of that parade in Columbus, Ohio, for Marcus Garvey next year. And I want to go to Columbus, Ohio, to give a presentation on the centenary of the parade, because it was a big thing, you know, in the history of Columbus, Ohio. They had over 2,300 people came to hear Marcus Garvey speak in September of 1923. Now, try and get 300 people together today.
Exactly.
Never mind 2,300. Try and get 300 people to come out for a Black nationalist, convention. It's sad, really. We're in a very splintered era, you know, when it comes to Black history. Very few. It's sad. It's not a good time, really. There's great stuff being done by people. This library you see behind me is my personal library. They're all Black history books.
You're a man after my own heart. I'm not home right now, but I have an extensive library just like that.
Okay, Michael, can I share something with your people about reading Marcus Garvey? Some of the best scholars to read. Could I just share that?
Sure.
Okay, so if you want to understand Marcus Garvey, and I hope you use this section, if you want to understand Marcus Garvey and the history of the UNIA, you've got to read certain scholars. I would start with Tony Martin.
Yes, I knew Tony Martin personally.
I knew him. I was on a panel with him once. But I would go for this. Does this come out? Is that coming out?
I used to sell that book.
Yeah. Okay. So
matter of fact, I used to distribute Tony Martin's books.
Okay. So you know what I'm talking about then.
Oh yeah.
So you must get that across to your people. So you've got Tony Martin would be a foundational read to understand Marcus Garvey. Then you would alongside Tony Martin, you would read Robert A. Hill's, you know, the Marcus Garvey and the UNIA papers, because there's 10 volumes of all the Garvey correspondence, you know, what Garvey spoke about, extractions from the Negro world. This is Robert A. Hill, the Marcus Garvey papers, 10 volumes. So you've got to Tony Martin, Robert A. Hill. To get close and personal to Marcus Garvey, you would read anything by Amy Jakes Garvey. That's Garvey's second wife. And she did a book published in 1970 called Garvey and Garveyism. So that's a very important book. And alongside knowing him, obviously very personal, she kept his legacy alive when he was in prison and after death. When he was in prison, she edited the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey. So you've got to read that book too. That's 2 volumes, usually now printed in one. But the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey must be read. And it was the editing skills of Amy Jakes Garvey that have kept that alive. Another book I would say, another scholar to read from a New York perspective would be John Henrik Clark.
Yes.
Anything by him in relation to Marcus Garvey, you know you're going to get some truth. And he was very close to Amy Jakes and would help edit her work for the Garvey movement and the Garvey history.
Now that I didn't know.
Yes, yeah, they were close. They were well. You see even this one here. I don't know whether see that.
Yes, yes, I'm familiar with that book.
Close.
Yeah.
John Henrik Clark helped her.
Oh.
You see?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he helped out and he wrote the introduction to that. So John Henrik Clark, well, he goes back. John Henrik Clark, I think it's 1918 he was born. Goes back a long way.
Goes back a ways, yeah.
Yeah, goes back a way, and he was very close to Malcolm as well. Malcolm X they used to meet at the bookstore. You know, Louis Michaud. I always get those two mixed up. Oscar is the filmmaker, African American filmmaker. You know, the famous Harlem bookstore, Michaud.
Right.
Well, that's where, you know, Malcolm used to go there often, and he would meet John Henrik Clark there. They were good friends, you know.
Yeah.
So if you read what I've just shared there, you will get a solid foundation of Marcus Garvey. Do not go to YouTube looking for all the history of anybody.
Of anything.
Anything. And I am a small contributor to Marcus Garvey's scholarship. I'm trying to keep the John Henrik Clarks alive, the Amy Jakes Garveys alive, the Tony Martins alive, the Robert A. Hill work alive. I'm doing that. That's my job.
Yeah.
And though I'm connected to the Marcus Garvey experience through my grandfather, they are the top scholars. I'm a carrier of their scholarship, if you like. Yeah. So that's what I want to get across today to your people. And please, I don't know what this psychopathic idiot is putting out there, but no, it's dangerous stuff.
It is dangerous.
It's very dangerous, and it's unfortunate that, I mean, it's what we want to do is keep Marcus Garvey alive, and he's killing Marcus Garvey as we're trying to keep his legacy alive. But there will always be crackpots who will give misinformation. Always will be crackpots giving misinformation. That's why I've shared the scholars, I've shared the books, I've showed you the evidence of the books. And I hope that's what you should do as well, Michael. When you're doing your Marcus Garvey program, show them the books.
Actually, I'm glad. That's why I'm glad you're on here, because I've done that already.
Good.
So I needed them to hear that it's not just coming from me.
No. And you're not crazy.
Right.
You're not making things up, because you see, you and I, we are lucky. We are the fortunate few who've read and connected to Black history and culture. Not everybody has had that opportunity.
Right.
And when I was in England, they were saying, "What are you doing going to America to do a master's in Black studies for, man?" I said, "Because it's my passion. It's what I want to do. I'm not doing it for money, man. I'm doing it because I want to do it." But you see, most people, and I'm not going to judge them, but most people are trying to earn $1 first.
That's it. That's what they're doing.
They're trying to earn $1, and they're not following their passions.
It's all about this right here.
All about the dollar. About the dollar, you see. Now, I've never chased dollar.
Me either.
I think if you chase what you love and you're passionate about it, money will come to you.
True.
But we're lucky. We're fortunate. And our job is quite responsible. We've got to keep this history alive, because right now, as we speak, there are white politicians in Florida and in Texas trying to stop Toni Morrison's "The Bluest Eye" being read. And that's mild. That's very mild compared to Marcus Garvey. You see?
Right.
Toni Morrison's work being read. I mean, come on, man. That we are
That's lightweight compared to
right. That's
Garvey.
lightweight compared to Garvey. So can you imagine the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey being read? And there's nothing bad about Garvey as well. Garvey was
Right.
just saying, "Hey, black people, love yourself.
Hmm.
Hey, black people, start doing something for yourself.
At a
Start
time where there was a lot of self hatred,
a lot of self
you
hatred.
know,
There still
and
is, though, Michael. Don't you
yeah,
think?
right.
When I'll get in trouble for this, they'll cancel me for this, but I don't care. I've reached a stage where we've got to speak our truths. But
Mm,
when our people are wearing the hair of another culture and weaving in foreign hair into their heads,
mm,
there's something mightily wrong with that.
yeah.
Now, and because I don't see other cultures taking hair from another culture and putting it in their head and running
Hmm.
around. No, we are in big we are in bad shape. As Malcolm said, we've been bamboozled.
Yeah,
We've been took.
hoodwinked. Yeah,
We've been had.
yeah.
So there's still a lot of self hatred, and
Hmm.
I just hope things change.
You're
But
getting a question
oh, okay.
from the chat, and and you could either take this or I can take this
What
question.
what what is the question?
He says, can he, referring to you, can he speak? Kami-san, he says, can he explain Garvey's connection with Walter Plecker? Did you want me to take that?
I think you should take that. I'm a little bit hazy on that. I'd
Right.
love to. What is that connection?
Okay, so basically, for the caller, I mean, for the viewer, I already, like I said, this is lecture 11
This is
of
11
the
for you.
Garvey series. I already spoke on Plecker, so you may have to go back to
What
the
is Plecker?
beginning. Walter Plecker was the eugenicist who was in charge of the um,
White man.
yeah. He
Oh,
was he was from Virginia, and he was the one who was over the vital statistics in Virginia, and he was responsible for the whole eugenics, sparking the eugenics in Virginia.
okay,
And
but what does that have to do with Garvey?
because Garvey, well, this falls along the lines of why Garvey met with the Klan and people like Walter Plecker, who had that mindset that the Caucasians and the at that time what they call coloreds should not
Mick.
mix and things of that nature. He was in charge of the vital statistics, um, and the reason why Garvey had met with um, Plecker, the Klan, as Professor already pretty much spoke to, the connection was basically that he wanted for there to be an understanding that we're not trying to
Integrate.
integrate. We're
Int-
not trying to, marry into the race and,
oh,
do all these things that y'all are concerned about. And he says, as long as you all stay where you are and leave us alone, it's basically to get an understanding. We have similar ideologies, okay, in terms of, their stance, the Garvey stance was black nationalism, okay, not integration. You had
right,
the integrationists, NAACP, and those of that nature. If anything, you want to be concerned with those people. You
right.
know, they
But
have a different agenda. You
I
know,
don't think the NAACP either were. I mean, there's integration and assimilation. There's two.
right,
There's two
exactly,
concepts
exactly,
there. Integration is a little bit more complex. You can be
true,
part of a society, but still keep your culture. You
exactly.
can be into, like pluralism. You cut an orange and there's different splices to it.
Hmm.
Well, one splice can be the African American culture, the other Italian, the other Polish, the other. What I'm saying is, you keep your culture. Now this it's quite ironic because given the history of the African American experience, who were the ones who were doing the raping and the connecting to black people historically?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we all the different shades of color, from vanilla to dark blue, red bone, all these different shades? Because historically, black women were being raped on their way here to the United States. So it's kind of ironic from when you hear the KKK saying black people keep away from our women, when it's really the other way around,
Mm-hmm.
the other way around. It's a complex history. That the eugenics thing, man, I don't know. I would be very careful with that, because that eugenics thing goes into Nazism, and it's like
Right.
they were the Aryan race is a mythical race. The Aryan, so-called Aryan, is mythical. There's no such thing, but they created that. The Nazis and those the KKK. Look, man, break down the philosophy of the KKK. They call themselves a Christian organization. Well, they don't like Jews. What was Jesus?
Exactly.
Apart from being black, what else was he? He was Jewish, apparently.
That was his religion.
And we know he had woolly hair and dark skin too. But that's another story. But you see the irony, and the eugenics thing is 1920s, and they had to go at their own white people. They had to go. They're looking for the WASP was the ideal type, white,
right.
Protestant, Anglo-Saxon, the ideal type of a white person. And there was many different types. Again, whiteness is never explored. It's always like you always put the spotlight on black people. But if you turn the spotlight around and say, okay, who is white? What are you? Are you a homogeneous people? Well, they're not. They're extremely diverse.
Exactly.
So they're very, misinformed, the KKK and all their followers, And I think you can get stuck in quicksand following their ideologies. You can get stuck in theoretical quicksand. I would just focus on us in our complexities, and we're a complex group. The African continent and the African diaspora is extremely diverse also, but there are certain things that bring us together, and Marcus Garvey was trying to do that. Malcolm X was trying to do that. He's saying you don't get lynched because you're a Christian. You don't get lynched because you're a Muslim. You get lynched because you have black heritage. That was Malcolm X in the 60s saying that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. So, this...
And this is where you got cut. This is the part that they clipped in the video. You're talking about the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But
and took it out of context.
Yeah, taken totally out of context, But basically, going back, why did Garvey meet with the KKK?
Which also is along with that question about Plecker, because that's what they're essentially asking.
Yeah, well, I would say F Plecker, because that's madness. And just think with the KKK. The KKK were a very violent group, particularly in the 1920s. And any black person, they would... Malcolm X's father was killed by the KKK.
Right.
So they were very vicious. And Garvey met to say, listen, crackers, we're not interested in your culture, what you're doing, what you think. We are not interested in you. Leave our people alone. And Elijah Muhammad, later on in the decades coming up, said the same thing because they met with them also.
They met with the Klan too. That's right.
They met with the Klan too. Oh, but not to be friends. Not to be friends, but to say, listen, cracker, leave our people alone. That's it.
That's all they were saying.
That's it, yeah.
Now
And
they weren't trying to join the Klan and all this foolishness that people are saying.
oh well, that's madness. That's mad. You see, Mark. You see the UNIA joining the Klan. You've got to be out of your mind to even think like that. Isn't that right,
Exactly.
Michael? You got to be
Yeah.
crazy.
And people are putting up memes of Marcus Garvey standing with the Klan, posing and
Oh, that's bad. That's
create.
bad. That's bad. That's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible. So you know what our focus should be on? Getting Marcus Garvey a pardon for that
Right.
trumped up charge of 1922, the
I
mail
know they
fraud.
did it here in New York under Dinkins, and I have that video.
Okay,
And when I find it, I'll make you a copy.
please do. You know Julius Garvey too, don't you?
Yes, I met Julius,
You met, yeah. I
one of
hope
Garvey's sons.
he's getting up there now in age, so we need to grab hold of him as well, and
Sure, I'd love to. That's what I'm trying to do now. If you have a link,
no, all I
yeah,
had was that email. I sent a long-winded email and I had no response.
yeah,
That
I
was
met
in,
him once, but that was in the early '90s.
yeah. Well, he was heading up this Justice for Garvey thing, and
Right.
I sent out my email and I gave a synopsis of my interest and my support, but they never returned the email. And then I
Mm.
got in touch with Black Classic Press also. Paul Coates, do you know of him?
Mm-mm.
Black Classic Press. It's a publication. Well, you should get to know Paul Coates. He's the
Mm.
father of Tessahani Coates. You know the writer.
No.
Okay, but Paul Coates used to be connected to the Black Panther history, and then he
Mm.
has a bookstore and he has a publishing outlet.
Mm.
So he's brilliant. Paul
Mm.
Coates and his son is,
Okay.
is quite prominent
Mm.
writer and mainstream. Toni Morrison actually said his son was the next James Baldwin.
Mm.
That may be a bit of a push, but
Yeah.
you know, but he's good. He's good at what he
Mm.
does. So I contacted them, and again they haven't got back to me. So that's all we can do is try to the way you've connected with me and I've connected back. That's all we can. What else can we do?
That's it. Yeah.
You know. But I'm just glad you've given me this opportunity to clear up this nonsense that they're splicing. I confirm that they met with the Garvey,
Mm.
with the
The Klan.
KKK, yeah, the Klan.
Yeah.
But look, if you read Tony Martin, he goes over this. So read
Right.
read Tony Martin, Google Tony Martin, Marcus Garvey, and the Klan, and then you get all the references and everything about it.
But the problem, Professor, is that these days people are not reading books.
I know.
All they do is do a Wikipedia search
Yeah,
or
it's not.
they
It's
look at
not
a
enough.
YouTube video.
Yeah, it's not enough, Michael. It's
Mm-mm.
not enough. And Malcolm said many moons ago they can take one sentence of what I've said and turn it into something I didn't say. And that's
That's
what
true.
that's what they can do. They're splicing all these videos because I never got interviewed by that guy. I was
Right.
interviewed in 2012 for Marcus Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Booker T. Washington. They did three
Mm.
10-minute interviews, and I think it was for ABC or some or History Channel or something. It's 10
Mm.
years ago, you know.
Wow. Yeah,
Yes, 10 years ago.
that's a while.
That's a
Yeah.
long time ago. So I'm a little bit more experienced now, thank God. I'm
Mm.
still here. And you've given me this opportunity to clear things up a little, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, a
Hopefully.
little. Also, I want to say that for those who just joined in at the beginning of the interview, I posted up a link for those who are generous enough to donate to help us out with what we do here in terms of bringing you information, getting the information to bring to you. Left the link for Cash App and PayPal for those who are generous enough to leave a donation. You don't have to, but it helps out with getting resources and things that I bring to y'all on a regular basis. And yeah, I just wanted to say that, Professor. And yeah, I'm just so. It's been a while. I'm so happy to see you again, man.
Yeah, it's great.
I love you. Listen, I loved your classes, man. As
Yeah.
you already know.
Yeah, I remember you very well. I mean, as soon as I see you there, oh, there's Michael. I'm glad you interviewed the Panthers during my time. The last
Poets.
The last poets. How are they doing?
Yeah, Abio Doom from the Last Poets.
Yeah, I remember him saying to me in the hall, "I'm glad you're keeping this history alive." He said that to me,
Wow. Yeah, he did. Right. That's right.
I was very moved by that,
Wow.
Yeah. Because
was,
I'm telling you, man, you ask a 10-year-old who the last poets are or a 15-year-old, they won't know.
They won't know.
So we've got
even a lot of older than that, a lot of 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds.
I was trying to be diplomatic.
Yeah.
I was trying to be, but it's that's I think our role is to try and spread. Do you have any more questions? Because I like questions that come from people. Is there any more?
Yes, there's another question, and I also want to shout out PNF Lord of the Crickets TV, who is in the chat, and he says, "Peace to myself, fierce truth seeker, and Islam to the indigenous Americans." Hey, Islam, and and my cousin Awanasa has a question. She asks, "Does Professor know anything about the Garvey nurses in the early 1900s with the Spanish flu?"
Oh no, I don't know about the flu. I don't know about the flu issue, but I know that there was a section of black nurses, and that the Garvey black nationalism empowered women. Women were very empowered, and that's a stereotype: is black nationalism is sexist. That's just not the case. In fact, Garvey said, "I wish there was more women. I wish our men were more like our women."
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm sure, I think what your questioner is asking, did the black nurses get involved with dealing with the Spanish flu at the time? And I would say it wouldn't surprise me if they were connected to helping the black community, but I don't know any specifics on that. That's something you could research, though.
I spoke on that in maybe 4 lectures ago.
Okay.
And basically, because what happened is, again, a lot of the street corner information that's coming out on Garvey, they're saying that the Black Cross nurses were part of the Tuskegee experiment and getting our people infected and this, that, and the other. And it's not true. I spoke to that in depth.
That's BS. It's BS because the Tuskegee was the 1940s.
Thank you. I said it about 4 lectures ago. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's bullshit. I'm sorry about the French, but that's
no.
Yeah, that's BS. And this is another thing about Tuskegee. They used the building, but it wasn't Tuskegee Institute itself. They just rented out the building to the government. So, although it's connected to the Institute, it wasn't the Institute's people behind those experiments.
Right.
So that's another little nuance. And by the way, Booker T. Washington was well passed on.
Thank you.
Booker T. Washington had nothing to do with that Tuskegee experiment issue. But there's a little museum there connected to that on the campus of Tuskegee. But Booker T. Washington he left a university behind, and thousands of young blacks from the South and beyond across the water. Booker T. Washington was a Pan-Africanist. You know,
Right. Yes, he was.
one of the earliest making inroads into Africa. Did you know that African students came to Tuskegee and African Caribbean students were coming to Tuskegee in
Yes.
the late 1800s and the early 1900s under
Hmm.
under the auspices of Booker T. Washington?
Yes.
See, that's Pan-Africanism in action.
Yeah, he was.
He never gets the kudos of being a Pan-Africanist. If you look up the history of Pan-Africanism, Booker T. Washington is extracted from it, and
Right.
that's wrong. It's incorrect. And W.E.B. Du Bois, I love the guy, but he wasn't. He was a little bit shaky when it comes to his relationship with Booker T. Washington
Yes. Yes.
and Marcus Garvey.
He was very critical of them.
Very critical. Well, yes. And if we could shine a light on Booker, on WEB, he wasn't perfect either, you know.
No.
None of us are, I don't think. But
Right.
we shouldn't be fighting each other. We should be
Mm-mm.
all like a mosaic of black culture, you know. I think Leonard Jeffries said this many moons ago. He said you shouldn't go against, you shouldn't be a WEB and against Garvey, or a Garvey and against WEB, and vice versa, or Malcolm and Martin. You should put them all on a mosaic of black history and culture and take the best you can from them. That's our generation.
Best from each.
Michael.
Right.
We've got to take the best from all of them, the women and the men who fought for us to have a modicum of freedom that we have today, you know. And that's it really. And you can go back down to Frederick Douglass and the men before Frederick Douglass, Alexander Crummell, you know, Henry Highland Garnett. All of them have made a contribution. Nobody's got the right to attack any historical figure in my estimation. You know,
Right.
we should all be in celebrating that history. But this is I'm sounding a little idealistic now, yeah. But at the end of the day, without them, Michael, we wouldn't be here, would we?
No. No. Yeah. That's true.
So what we've got to do is, they always attack the most blackest of our people in terms of theoretical blackness. If you know, they attack Malcolm more than they attack Martin. They attack Marcus Garvey more than they do Du Bois. You know, it's always those that stand for black self-determination that seem to be attacked more. And you got to see through that nuance. And when you see through that, you can, you know, make a more intelligent decision about black history and culture, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. They oh yeah, again, this is Fierce Truth Seeker, the Red Road East. And for those who just joined in, this is Professor Mark Christian. And this was my Black Studies professor in college. Okay, I know there's some people who just joined in. And yes, you're definitely right. Um, those who stood for self-reliance and self-determination were always more criticized, you know.
Yeah. Michael, I hope those who've tuned in late get to see our whole entire discussion. I hope so.
Right. They'll have to go back and, you know, this is recorded live, so they'll be able to go back after it's done and
because we've thrown some great historical data out today, haven't we?
Yes.
There's some very important points that we've talked about. If somebody just tuned in now, they wouldn't know what we've talked about, some very important issues.
Exactly.
So I hope, you know, this, you know, people watch it later.
Yeah.
And you know, that's it. So are we done now?
Yes, we're done. And definitely would like for you to join us again, you know.
Anytime. Just let me know. And let's keep pushing for Garvey to be pardoned.
Right.
I
I'm
think
I'm I'm down for that. And also, we do a parade, an annual parade. I'm involved with that, the Garvey Parade.
I
There's two
didn't know.
parades here in New York.
Can you let me know about them, please?
Yes, there's the one that's in Harlem, and then we have the hip hop parade in honor of Marcus Garvey that's been going on since like the 90s
Where does that take place?
in Brooklyn.
I thought so,
So
Brooklyn.
I'm involved with that.
You live
Last
do you live in Brooklyn?
No, I'm in the Bronx.
Oh, you're in the Bronx. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, Bronx
But
strong.
I'm from Brooklyn originally.
I thought so. I
Yeah.
thought I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael. Listen, it was great talking to you, man. And
Okay, likewise.
I
And
hope your listeners see the whole package. because
they
it's
will. They will.
all right.
It's automatically recorded,
Okay.
and it's gonna play just as it is.
All right, Michael. And I'll happy to come on again with a broader audience.
Yes. Yes.
Anytime you want me. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, Michael. All the best, man.
Okay, now take care.
Bye.
Thanks for having you. Okay, folks. So there you have it. That was my professor from college, and he said he echoed. I didn't prep him for this or anything like that. So as you can see, the same things that I've been telling you all in regards to Garvey, he echoed the same. Okay. So on that note, thanks for all who joined. And again, if you look up at the beginning of the chat, I left the links for those who are generous enough to leave a donation. I left the Cash App and the PayPal information. And until the next time, do da da, go huh, eh.